At my friend's wedding, under the warm golden lights strung across the ballroom and the white ribbons tied neatly to every chair, I stood in the middle of laughter, music, and champagne bubbles floating through the air. Everything about that night felt perfect, almost too perfect, like nothing could break the happiness radiating from Emily, the bride, my best friend, the girl who had been with me through every heartbreak, every late-night study session, every dream we scribbled into notebooks when we were teenagers. She was glowing in her dress, eyes sparkling as if she carried the whole sky inside her, and for a moment I just let myself breathe in the joy. But then, right there in the middle of all that beauty, something happened that I will never forget. A man I barely knew, Ryan, a so-called friend of the groom, walked up to me. He smiled like everything was normal, lifted his glass as if making a toast, then leaned so close to my ear that I felt his breath against my skin. And then he whispered words so vile, so sharp that I froze where I stood. The music was still playing, couples still swayed, glasses still clinked. But inside me, there was nothing, just silence roaring louder than the band. My champagne glass trembled in my hand, my mind racing, my body locked. His words weren't just disgusting. They were designed to corner me, to force me into silence, to make me carry his poison like a secret. For one awful second, I didn't move. And yet, deep down, something told me. If I stayed silent, I would never forgive myself. But to understand why those words cut so deep, you have to know the story that came before them. Emily and I met in college, two broke girls in a rundown apartment with peeling paint and a heater that clanked every night like it was ready to give up. We shared ramen dinners, thrift store clothes, and hours of talking about boys who weren't worth our tears. She was my anchor, the one who knew me when I tried to hide behind fake smiles. And I was the first person she called when Daniel proposed. I remember sitting in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, tears in my eyes as she whispered, "I'm getting married." Can you believe it? From that moment on, her wedding wasn't just her dream. It became mine too. We spent months planning together. We tasted cakes until we were sugar drunk, argued over whether a jazz band or a DJ was better, and hunted down the perfect flowers that matched her vision of lavender and gold. We cried the day she found the dress, the one that made her look like she had stepped straight out of a dream. Every detail of that wedding was stitched together with love, late-night texts, and endless laughter. So by the time the big day arrived, I thought, this is it, everything she deserves, everything perfect. The ceremony was like a scene from a movie. The chapel smelled of roses and polished wood. The sunlight streaming through stained glass painted the floor in colors. And when Emily walked down the aisle, her dad already in tears, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. She was everything good in the world, and I cried too, my mascara smudging as I clutched my bouquet. The reception was no less magical. Fairy lights twinkled across the ceiling, candles glowed on every table, and laughter bounced off the walls like music. Guests danced, kids twirled in circles, and the cookie table groaned under a mountain of sugar. It was the kind of night you want to bottle and keep forever. But every perfect night has shadows. That shadow was Ryan. I had noticed him before, loud and overconfident, his laugh cutting through conversations, his grin stretched too wide. People said he was harmless, just the loud one. I wasn't so sure. I avoided him, busying myself with helping Emily adjust her veil, making sure she got to eat something, capturing little moments on my phone so she wouldn't forget them. But trouble has a way of finding you when you least want it. I was standing near the drinks table, finally taking a breath, sipping water this time instead of champagne. The band had shifted into something slow, couples dancing under the lights when Ryan came too close. He made a casual comment about the music, about my dress, but his eyes carried something else, something sharp. And then he leaned in. His breath reeked of whiskey. His tone dropped into a whisper, and he spoke words that made my skin crawl. Words that weren't just inappropriate but cruel, poisonous, meant to shake me, maybe even meant to ruin Emily's night through me. I wish I could say I reacted instantly, that I snapped back, called him out on the spot. But the truth, I froze. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst, my head spinning with questions. If I spoke, would I ruin this night for Emily? Would I become the one who broke the magic? If I stayed silent, wasn't I letting him win, letting his poison spread unchecked? My eyes found Emily across the room, still laughing with her aunt, veil catching in the sequins of her dress, joy radiating from her like sunlight. She deserved nothing but happiness. And in that moment, I realized silence wasn't neutral, it was betrayal. I placed my glass down carefully, my hand shaking but my resolve hardening. Ryan's smirk told me he thought I would swallow his words and protect his secret. But he was wrong. Not tonight, not here, not at Emily's wedding. And as I turned to face him, my breath steadying, I already knew. He had no idea what was coming. He leaned even closer, the smirk never leaving his face, and repeated just loud enough for me to hear. Daniel was with someone else last night. Not Emily, someone else. You should ask him where he really was. My chest went cold, like ice water had been poured straight into my veins. My first thought was that he was lying, trying to plant poison in the middle of the happiest night of Emily's life. My second thought was worse, that maybe he wasn't lying. Either way, the words felt like a weapon. He wanted me to carry them like a grenade I didn't know how to throw or hide. I stared at him, trying to read his face, but he just sipped his drink like he'd told me the weather, like he hadn't just ripped open the possibility of shattering my best friend's wedding. You ever have a moment where your brain splits in two? One part of me screamed to walk away, to not give him what he wanted, to let the night continue without me poisoning it further. The other part of me, the louder, angrier part, said if I let this slide, if I swallowed his whisper, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I glanced around. No one seemed to notice us. Guests were still dancing, laughing, clinking glasses. The DJ had switched songs, and the bride and groom were wrapped up in each other, Emily glowing, Daniel smiling like a man who had everything he ever wanted. My stomach twisted. Was Ryan lying to destroy them, or was he telling me a truth I didn't want to hear? He chuckled, low and mocking, like he could see the storm brewing in my head. Don't look so shocked, he said, leaning against the table like he belonged there. You think people like him stay loyal? Please, Emily's too naive to see it. But you're smarter. You should tell her. Or maybe not. Maybe just keep it our little secret. That last word, secret, made bile rise in my throat. He wanted to trap me, to make me complicit. And that's when I realized it wasn't just about Emily or Daniel. It was about me. About whether I was going to stand up or shrink back. My heart pounded so loud I thought the whole room could hear it. My palms were slick, my throat dry, but my voice when it came out surprised even me. Why would you tell me this? I asked, steady even. He grinned wider. Because I like watching people squirm, and you're squirming. He winked like we were sharing some inside joke, but my skin crawled. I wanted to slap the smirk off his face, but instead I forced myself to breathe, to think. My mind raced through every memory I had of Daniel, his devotion to Emily, the way he looked at her, the countless times he'd shown up for her when no one else did. Could Ryan be making this up? Could he be that cruel? The answer was obvious. Yes, he could. But what if he wasn't? The weight of it pressed on me like a stone. I took a step back, creating space between us, and he laughed like it amused him. Careful, he said. Don't want to trip and ruin the bride's big moment, do you? The way he said it made my blood boil. He wasn't just delivering news. He was playing with me, daring me to react, to explode, to ruin everything. And maybe that was his goal all along. I closed my eyes for half a second, grounding myself. Emily's laughter carried across the room, bright and pure, and it anchored me. This wasn't about me being humiliated. This was about protecting her. I opened my eyes, looked him straight in the face, and said, "Say it again." But this time loud enough for someone else to hear. His smirk faltered, just a fraction. He hadn't expected me to push back. He glanced around, then shook his head. "Relax, sweetheart. It was just a joke." "No," I said, louder this time, my voice steady enough that a couple of heads turned. "You don't get to whisper things like that and then call it a joke." He raised his hands like he was innocent, his grin slipping into something meaner, harder. "You're overreacting. Don't ruin the night." My hands shook, but I clenched them into fists at my sides. The thought of Emily, smiling, dancing, believing this was the happiest night of her life, it made my decision for me. If Ryan was lying, he needed to be stopped. If he was telling the truth, Emily deserved to know. Either way, silence was not an option. I leaned forward, so close he could see the fire in my eyes. "You think you cornered me?" But you didn't. You just gave me a reason to open my mouth. For the first time, his smirk vanished completely. His eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched, and for a second he looked less like a man enjoying a party and more like someone who realized he'd made a mistake. Around us, people were starting to notice, whispers spreading, eyes turning toward us. The air shifted, tension crackling like static before a storm. My heart hammered, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to stay a whisper much longer. The whispers around me grew louder, like a tide pulling everyone closer, and I could feel dozens of eyes darting our way. My pulse raced in my throat, but I stood my ground, refusing to let Ryan slide his poison back into the shadows. He shifted on his feet, that cocky smirk flickering as he realized the attention was no longer his to control. "She's making a scene," he said quickly, raising his hands like he was the victim, like I was the one overreacting. I was just kidding, just messing around. Can't anyone take a joke anymore? A few nearby guests exchanged glances, uncertain, while others leaned in, curiosity piqued. I caught Emily's maid of honor looking over, brows furrowed, lips parted as if ready to step in. My stomach twisted, but my voice came out steady. "You whispered something disgusting about the groom. You thought I'd keep it quiet, but I won't." Gasps rippled through the air, sharp enough to cut through the music. The band faltered for half a beat before the lead singer recovered, voice trembling slightly as the song carried on, but the spell of carefree joy had cracked. Ryan's face darkened. He leaned closer, his voice low, venom dripping between clenched teeth. "You don't know what you're doing. You'll ruin everything." I met his glare without flinching. "No, Ryan," I said, forcing every word to be clear. "You tried to ruin it the second you opened your mouth." For a moment, silence pressed heavy on us, as if the whole room was waiting to see what would happen next. My chest ached from holding my breath, but deep inside, something shifted. I wasn't frozen anymore. I wasn't cornered. I was standing tall, and he knew it. He laughed suddenly, a harsh bark that made a few guests jump. "Fine, you all want to hear it?" He shouted, spreading his arms wide as if performing on a stage. "I told her Daniel spent last night with someone who wasn't his bride." "That's it? That's the big scandal." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. All around us, the chatter erupted into shocked murmurs. I saw Emily across the room, her smile fading, her hand slipping from Daniel's arm as she turned, eyes wide, trying to process what she'd just overheard. My heart shattered for her. Ryan smirked again, feeding on the chaos, but I wasn't going to let him control the narrative. I raised my voice, louder than I thought I could, cutting through the noise. He whispered it like a secret, like he wanted me to carry his filth in silence. He wanted to humiliate her through me. But I won't be part of that. My words caught like fire. People stared at Ryan, their expressions shifting from confusion to disgust. Someone muttered, "That's cruel." Another whispered, "What kind of man does that at a wedding?" And slowly the tide began to turn against him. Ryan tried to laugh it off again, but the sound rang hollow, desperate. "You all don't get it," he sneered, pointing at me. "She's twisting it, making me the bad guy." "I was just trying to warn her." His eyes darted toward Emily, as if hoping she'd side with him, as if she'd believe his words over mine. But Emily wasn't looking at him. She was staring at me, tears glimmering in her eyes, silently asking for the truth. My chest tightened. I wanted to protect her, shield her from the ugliness of this moment, but I also knew lies fester when left unchecked. I nodded once, barely noticeable, but it was enough. Her lips trembled, and Daniel placed a hand on her arm, confusion and anger etched into his face. The room buzzed louder, the tension unbearable, like everyone was waiting for a bomb to go off. Ryan stepped closer to me again, trying to drop his voice so only I could hear, but I wasn't going to give him that power back. "You think you're brave?" he hissed. "You're just naive. This will come back on you." My hands shook, but I lifted my chin, letting everyone hear my answer. I'd rather be naive than cruel. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, subtle but strong, like a current shifting. Ryan's eyes narrowed, rage flickering in his gaze, but for the first time, he looked smaller, cornered not by me, but by the truth exposed under too many watchful eyes. And yet, even as the crowd turned against him, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The way his jaw clenched, the way he scanned the room like a predator searching for another angle. It told me he wasn't done, not yet. Then, as if to prove my fear right, Ryan suddenly raised his voice again, louder than before, his words slicing through the ballroom. "You all think she's some hero for calling me out? You don't know the half of it. She doesn't want you to know what I know. She's hiding something too." Gasps filled the air and my breath caught in my throat. What was he about to say? What secret did he think he had on me? Or was he about to invent one? The entire room leaned in, every eye pinned on us, waiting for his next move. The moment Ryan's words cut through the ballroom, "She's hiding something too," the air seemed to collapse in on itself. Dozens of eyes snapped toward me, wide and questioning, and my throat went dry. For half a second, panic shot through me, the instinct to shrink, to let his accusation hang unanswered. That's what he wanted. He wanted me to flinch, to crumble under the weight of suspicion. He leaned back, enjoying the ripple of tension he had unleashed, his grin spreading like wildfire. "Yeah, that's right," he said, projecting his voice so every guest could hear. "She's not the innocent friend she pretends to be. She's been covering things up. She's known Daniel isn't faithful, and she's kept it from the bride. Some friend, huh?" A murmur broke out across the crowd, sharp and cutting, and I felt the heat rise in my face. My heart pounded, but beneath the panic, something else stirred. Anger. A deep, burning anger that this man thought he could manipulate me, twist my integrity, and smear me just to save himself. I forced myself to breathe, even as my legs trembled, and raised my voice clear and strong. "That's a lie. A complete lie." Gasps rippled again, but I didn't stop. I never knew anything like that because there is nothing to know. He's inventing stories to distract from what he just did, whispering filth to me to ruin this wedding. Ryan laughed, sharp and cruel, clapping his hands once like he'd caught me in a trap. "Of course you'd say that, but isn't it convenient you're so quick to defend Daniel? Maybe you've got your own reason." He tilted his head, his eyes narrowing like a predator circling prey. "Maybe you've always wanted him for yourself." The crowd erupted in shocked chatter, a few voices rising in disbelief. I felt my stomach churn, nausea clawing its way up my throat, but I steadied myself on the edge of the table and forced my gaze to meet his. "You don't get to rewrite reality just because you're cornered," I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the noise. "This isn't about me, and it never was. This is about you trying to poison the happiest day of someone else's life. But not everyone here is as blind as you think." A hush fell again, like the whole room was waiting to see what I'd do next. My pulse hammered in my ears, but I straightened my shoulders and turned slightly, addressing the guests instead of just him. "I've known Emily for years. I've been by her side through every heartbreak, every tear, every victory. If I had ever seen something off about Daniel, she would have known before anyone else, and I will not stand here and let a drunken whisper turn into a dagger." Heads nodded slowly, doubt shifting, eyes narrowing at Ryan instead of me. I caught Emily's gaze again, and tears spilled freely down her cheeks now, her lips pressed together. But she nodded once, small but firm, as if to say she believed me. That single nod gave me strength. Ryan saw it too, and his expression twisted. The smirk was gone. What replaced it was pure fury. "You think you've won them over?" he spat. "You think a speech erases the truth? You're just another liar protecting a liar." He grabbed another drink from the table, downed it in one gulp, and slammed the glass down hard enough to make it crack. A few people gasped, a few others stepped back. For the first time, he looked less like a man in control and more like a man unraveling. But he wasn't done. He pointed at me, his finger trembling slightly from rage or alcohol or both. "If you want to play hero, fine. But you're going down with him. I'll make sure of it." Something inside me snapped then. Maybe it was the months of planning this wedding, the countless nights sitting with Emily while she dreamed about this day, or maybe it was simply the realization that men like him thrived on fear. Either way, I refused to give him one more ounce of mine. I stepped forward, closing the space between us so the entire room could see, and said, "You already lost, Ryan. The moment you whispered those words to me, you showed the world exactly who you are. And now, everyone's watching." The silence that followed was heavy, charged, and unbreakable. Ryan's eyes darted around the room, catching the stares, the judgment, the disgust etched on faces. His bravado cracked, and for the first time, he looked like the one cornered. But I knew men like him don't back down quietly. He'd look for another way, another weapon. I could feel it brewing in the way his fists clenched, the way his lips curled back. And sure enough, he leaned in one last time, his voice low, a hiss meant only for me, but heavy enough to chill my bones. You may think you've turned them against me tonight, but you don't know what I know. You don't know the secrets that can burn everything down. My breath caught, the fire in my chest colliding with a wave of cold fear. He wasn't finished. He wasn't bluffing. And as I pulled back, staring into the storm of his eyes, I realized part of me dreaded the possibility that he wasn't lying, that maybe there was something out there, some truth buried in shadows that he was about to unleash. The guests held their breath. Emily clutched Daniel's arm tighter, and I stood frozen in the middle of it all, waiting for the next words that could tear everything apart. The room felt like it was holding its breath, every pair of eyes pinned on Ryan as his words slithered through the air. You don't know the secrets that can burn everything down. My stomach lurched, a sick cocktail of fear and fury twisting inside me. But I forced myself not to look away, not to give him the satisfaction of seeing me falter. He thrived on power, on dangling threats like sharp hooks, and I knew if I backed down now, he'd win not just tonight, but in the memory of every person here. He leaned closer, his voice a low hiss that only I could hear. You really want to keep pushing me? Then I'll tell them everything. I straightened my shoulders, my voice steady even as my heart hammered. Then say it, I told him, loud enough for everyone to hear. Say it out loud, in front of Emily, in front of Daniel, in front of every witness here. If you're going to burn this night down, do it openly. Ha, don't whisper like a coward! Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emily's trembling hand clutched her bouquet tighter, Daniel's jaw set like stone, and the guests leaned in, hungry and horrified all at once. Ryan blinked, thrown off for the first time, his mouth twitching as he realized the spotlight he craved was now searing, unrelenting, unforgiving. He laughed, a hollow sound that cracked at the edges. Fine, you want the truth? Daniel isn't who you think he is. Last week... But before he could finish, a voice rang out, sharp and steady, cutting through the chaos. It was Daniel. Enough. The entire room froze as he stepped forward, pulling Emily gently but firmly beside him. His face was pale but resolute, his eyes locked on Ryan with a mixture of anger and disgust. You don't get to ruin this day with lies, Daniel said, his voice carrying more weight than I had ever heard from him before. Whatever game you're playing, it ends here. Ryan sneered. Oh, so you're denying it? Of course you would. That's what liars do. But Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, swiping quickly before holding it up for everyone to see. I was with my brother last night, finalizing travel plans. Here's the call log. Here are the messages. You want proof? Here it is. He turned the screen so the nearest guests could see, and a ripple of murmurs confirmed it. There were the timestamps, the conversations, the receipts of his whereabouts. Ryan's smirk faltered, his face paling as the evidence cut the ground out from under him. I seized the moment, my voice clear and strong. So what now, Ryan? What's left of your story? You thought you could corner me with whispers. You thought you could corner this whole room with lies. But the truth is, you're nothing more than a man desperate for attention, willing to hurt anyone to get it. The crowd shifted, the energy turning sharp and united. Someone muttered, "Pathetic." Another said, "How cruel." And suddenly the tide was irreversible. Emily, tears streaming down her cheeks but fire burning in her eyes, stepped forward. She looked small in her wedding dress, delicate even, but the steel in her voice silenced the room. You came here pretending to celebrate, but all you wanted was to destroy. You will not steal this day from me. Get out! Her words cracked like thunder, final and unyielding. For the first time, Ryan looked shaken. He glanced around wildly, searching for a single sympathetic face, but found none. The smirk was gone, replaced by something desperate, almost pitiful. He opened his mouth to argue, to claw back control, but before he could, Daniel stepped closer, his frame imposing, his voice firm. You heard her. Leave. The crowd parted like water, creating a path straight to the exit. Ryan hesitated, his chest heaving, but the weight of 100 eyes pressing down on him was too much. With a muttered curse, he grabbed his jacket, shoved through the aisle of guests, and stormed out, the doors slamming shut behind him. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Emily's quiet sob. My heart ached, but I moved to her side, wrapping my arms around her as she shook. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, though deep down I knew this wasn't my burden. It was his cruelty that had poisoned the night. Still, Emily clutched me tightly, her voice trembling. "No, thank you. Thank you for not staying silent." Around us, the guests began to murmur again, softer this time, voices laced with sympathy and support. The band hesitated, instruments idle, waiting for a cue. Daniel held Emily's hand, looking at her with such raw love that despite the storm, I knew they would weather it. And me? I stood there, my heart still pounding, realizing something important. This wasn't just about one night or one wedding. This was about every moment in my life when I had frozen, when I had let whispers stay whispers instead of speaking truth. Tonight I had chosen differently. Tonight I had stood tall. Emily wiped her tears, straightened her veil, and with a shaky smile whispered, "Let's dance. Let's take back our night." And just like that, the band struck up again, hesitant at first, then stronger, as laughter and chatter slowly returned. Guests clapped, couples moved back to the dance floor, and though the air was still heavy, it carried a new strength. I watched Emily and Daniel step into the center, holding each other tighter than ever, and the sight brought tears to my eyes. Not tears of grief this time, but of pride, of resilience, of the reminder that even when shadows creep into the brightest places, light can fight its way back. Later, as I sat at the edge of the dance floor, watching my best friend reclaim her joy, I thought about Ryan's last words, about the secrets he claimed to hold. Maybe it was all lies. Maybe there was nothing left. Or maybe, just maybe, there were still truths hidden in the dark corners of this story, waiting to be unearthed. And that thought lingered in my chest, unsettling but alive, as if the night wasn't finished whispering its lessons.